was going on, and they are still working on that bill. I haven't missed a single vote coming out here. But I did get a nice word from Bartlesville's own Forrest Bennett, who's a distinguished representative in South Oklahoma City. And Forrest says, "Hi, Tom." and he said, "Well, you're going to really like Crossing Second. It's a nice place." I work with him every day. I get a little crick in my neck talking to him, but he's a good guy, and he's a distinguished son of Bartlesville. Real credit to the city. I'm really happy to be here today, and I thought maybe I would say a few things. First of all, I'm really grateful to be here because this is a great restaurant. This is a great community. I'm grateful not to be in the Capitol right now, and I'm also especially grateful that I didn't pull that coat out of my closet this morning. I almost did. I want to tell you a little bit about the bill that they're working on right now, because it kind of speaks to why I'm here. You know, Oklahoma has a great National Guard outfit, one of the best in the country. And I've got a National Guard, Air National Guard base in my district. The 198th Air Wing flies out of Tulsa. We're revising the rules for the National Guard, which is state purview. We get to organize the militia, which is nationalized under federal law as the National Guard unit. But we get to set up the local rules, and we're tweaking the rules because one member of the House hopes to be the next adjutant general. So he's organizing the rules to he's basically creating his own job description. And they got to 30 votes in the Senate. This is a veto override. The governor vetoed the bill. I think maybe it was a personal issue between the two gentlemen. And they got to 30 votes and it ground to a halt. And they brought two Democrats into an office and leaned on them for an hour and started making deals, and they got up to 31, and then a Republican flipped, and now they're back to 30, and they're in trench warfare right now. And this is a function of supermajority government. People say, you know, if we just had one party in charge, things would work great. Because after all, in democracy, all we do is argue with each other. And if we could just have authority running things, everything would be great, right? No, not at all. We have there are 19 Democrats in the House of Representatives right now. Sorry, 18 Democrats with 2 vacancies. There are 80 Republicans. So it's more than 4-1 in the House. It's 5-1 in the Senate. So it should be easy for the Republicans to do whatever they want. But no, what we find instead, when you have supermajority government, power gets concentrated in a few individuals, ego expands, and then those egotistical individuals fight with each other. House fights with Senate, legislature fights with governor, etc., etc. And the fights get to be about smaller and smaller issues of particular concern to leadership. And what matters to people on the ground, the people who actually vote for the legislators, the citizens that are served by the legislature, their interests get less and less important. The good news is we do have Democrats in the legislature, and while we are not half the body, we are half the conversation. And you have good, effective Democratic leaders working for you every day in the legislature. Even if you haven't elected them here in Washington County, you have people truly fighting for the citizens of Washington County in Democrat-held seats all over the state. Let me give you some examples of what we're doing. Today, we overturned the governor's veto by a vote of 83-10. We overturned the governor's veto on requiring insurance companies to cover mammograms. Representative Melissa Provenzano, a public school educator in District 79, carried that bill last year, worked on it really hard, said not all insurance companies are covering mammograms. We should be covering those because that is one of the leading that's one of the things we're top 10 in Oklahoma is breast cancer and deaths by breast cancer. So she ran the bill and she moved it forward and she moved it forward and she got it over the line, and then the governor vetoed it. I don't think the governor realized that between the time she introduced the bill and the time we passed the bill, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. So when we voted on that bill, when we voted on the veto override, there was Melissa Provenzano standing proud on the floor and being celebrated by Republicans and Democrats in her wig because she's just completed her rounds of chemotherapy. She's just taken on that disease and beat it, and now she took on the governor and beat him too. And that's what Democrats do every day in the Oklahoma State Legislature. Here's another one. You know what else we lead the nation in? Gun deaths. Veteran suicides by guns. You know what the leading cause of death for children and adolescents is in this country? It's guns. We are a proud state when it comes to the Second Amendment. It's an important part of our culture. I don't dispute that, though I've had many arguments with my colleagues about the extensiveness of gun rights. But Senator Joanna Dossett ran a bill this year that doesn't take away anybody's rights to guns, but makes it easier to exercise your rights responsibly. A sales tax exemption on gun safes and gun safety devices. She ran this legislation. It's the second time she's run it. And what she did was convince Republicans that this was a proper response to constitutional carry. It's a good way to keep guns out of the hands of kids. It's a good way to get veterans to think twice before their PTSD causes them to do something deadly to themselves. It's gonna save a lot of lives. And it just came into law this morning. I won't say with the governor's signature because he didn't bother to sign it, but after 5 days, if the governor hasn't signed a bill and the legislature's in session, it comes into law. And it came into law this morning. Now, what about daycare deserts? Or I really prefer to use the term early childhood education. Parents of kids ages 0 to 3 struggle with finding good, reliable places to keep their kids so that they can work. Places that are going to nourish and nurture those kids and help make them better prepared for school. Suzanne Schreiber out in Tulsa has been working on this legislation since she got in. She just got passed legislation that makes it easier for somebody operating an early childhood education center to operate, removing costly regulations like having a professional sprinkler system inside your home when you're running an early childhood education center. She streamlined the rules, she made it easier, she got it through, and that's another great example of how Democrats represent the people of Oklahoma, all the people of Oklahoma, even if they might not be your representatives. So let's hear it for the Democrats in the House and the Senate and their potential to turn this state around. I want to say a little bit about myself. I was a public school teacher. I taught for 20 years in Tulsa. I'm probably, incidentally, I might be your closest elected Democrat because I'm in Northeast Tulsa. I have the airport. Yeah, no, you've got Ronnie Stewart and Michelle McCain might be a little closer, but I'm, not that far from you, and I want to be accessible to you guys. I campaigned on the issue that every child deserves access to good public schools. Do you agree? You would think everyone could agree on this, but the GOP caucus has gotten so far down the rabbit hole that they've got a lot of people saying, well, private industry does everything better than those government schools that indoctrinate their kids, and therefore we should be giving private tax credits to parents so they can send their kids to private schools. No. Yeah, notice how they package it? The private sector is always better. These are parent choice tax credits. Well, I got up on the House floor when the education budget came up last week, and I pointed out that that is not parent choice. It's private school choice. They choose which kids they're going to take. And you know what? 92% of the kids receiving the vouchers were already enrolled in private schools, could already afford to pay for those private schools. And those private schools did not expand to take every kid. They never wanted to do that. What did they do? They raised tuition. And I pointed this out. I pointed out other things. The private sector, you know what one thing it doesn't do so well? Public accountability. I once brought a bill to Senator Daniels, you're a senator, and I said, okay, private schools taking the voucher should not raise tuition. I showed her the bill. She has a little standing desk in her office. And she looked at it at her standing desk and said, nope, sorry, they're private businesses. We can't regulate them. But apparently, we can hand them $250 million public dollars, which then become theirs. Because did you know that those voucher checks, they don't go to the parent. They go to the school. And the school calls you and says, your check is here. And you show up and they say, sign it over. And they're not restricted to keep their costs low. They're not required to take in more kids. They're not even required to take the kids, to keep the kids that they take. So what happens if you enroll your child in a private school, you receive the voucher, let's say you got $7,500 for the voucher, tuition was $15,000. You're not rich, so you scrimp and you save to make the rest of it, and your kid's in the private school. Great. But then the private school decides, and I'm not making this up, this happened in 2 schools not so far from here. The school reads the kid's letter where she talks about how she loves her friend who's of the same sex. And they decide that kid has violated the contract, the terms of agreement for that for their school, and they kick that kid out. That happened to an 8-year-old in Owasso and another small child in my district. Guess what happens to the voucher check? Does the private school send it back to refund the government? No, those are private businesses. We can't regulate them. They keep the money. So it's a wash for the parent, right? No, because the tax commission finds out their kid is no longer enrolled in the private school, and they claw back the $7,500 from the family whose child was not served by the private schools. Perfectly legal. Because after all, we can't regulate, we can't tell private schools what to do. But we can tell public schools what to do with every minute of their time. We're gonna add $25 million to the public school funding formula this year. And I'm grateful for any increase in education. I was a teacher during the decade when we led the nation in cuts to public education, 35% on a per pupil basis adjusted for numbers and inflation. And then we did something right. There was a teacher walkout. The legislature finally did the right thing. They raised taxes 7 years ago. They increased funding for education. That brought us back to maybe where we should have been. And then we had a pandemic and an inflation crisis. And Ryan Walters. 3 things people will say to me on the streets. Hey, how about the weather we're having? Hey, do you have a faith home in your community? And hey, when are you going to impeach Ryan Walters? And the answer is, I called for his impeachment 2 years ago. The Republican leadership refuses to act. And now they say he's going to run for governor. Do we want that? You know of any Democrats running for governor? Cindy Munson, that's right. Leader of the House of Representatives. Leader of us House Democrats, that is. Okay, so when it comes to these vouchers, we're going to give $25 million more to the public schools, but we're going to require them to add 1 more school day, which, and depending on how many days Bartlesville Public Schools does, they might or might not have to add a day, which means more bus drivers, more utilities, more overtime, more supplies, et cetera, et cetera. So we gave them some money, but we also gave them this requirement and took back some of that increase. We also did something good. We added steps to the teacher salary schedule so that teachers who have taught for 35, 40 years. Are there any teachers in the room? Woo! Adam, what do you teach?
9th grade English.
Oh my God, God bless you. Okay. Can I say that in front of this podium? Good Lord. All right, I was a social studies teacher. Major props to you. We're going to, you know what it's going to cost to give those teachers extra steps at 35, 40 years? It's going to cost about $23.75 million. So here's your $25 million. But here we're going to encumber all but $1.25 million. And if your school district doesn't run this sufficient number of days, we're going to make you add a day to the school year, which means lots of school districts are going to be in the hole with this budget. And which school districts? Oddly enough, not Tulsa public schools. We already have a long school year. We can handle that easily. It's the small rural schools in little isolated places that are strapped and maybe did a virtual day here and there to help make ends meet. They're the ones that are going to get hit. They're the ones that have been electing Republican legislators who voted for the vouchers. Did I tell you how much new money the private schools get this year? Just a second. I said $25 million for the public school kids, 700,000 public school kids. There are about 35,000 private school kids. So 20 public for every private school kid. What do the private school kids get for the $25 million the public school kids get? $50 million without any encumbrance at all. Where are the values of the GOP on public education?
Down the tubes.
Down the tubes is correct. They have got such a leadership advantage that they can force their rural representatives to vote against the interests of their own schools and to drink the Kool-Aid on this ideology that the private sector always does everything better. If the private sector did everything better, why are they still debating a National Guard bill right now? We could privatize that. Anybody watch Game of Thrones? That'll tell you what that's like. Okay, so the point is, we have a supermajority government that is not doing right by the state of Oklahoma. It serves the interests of a few egotistical leaders. It forces rural representatives to betray the interests of rural communities. And it gets bigger and bigger every year. Let's talk about the so-called party of small government. I was in the room in a committee meeting where the member, this is in what we call the State Powers Committee, the man gets up and he's got a bill, and the bill says that if a teacher has a little pink triangle in his classroom saying this is a safe space for kids who might belong to at Booker T we had the Sofa Club, so that was kids of different sexual orientations, a safe place for them. And we found that having a Sofa Club, a place where kids could come and get away from find other people like them, get away from whatever situation they were in, that dramatically improved the mental health of students. Well, this guy had a bill saying you can't put that pink triangle in your room. You can't have a pride flag in your classroom. He wanted to reach government into the space of every classroom teacher in Oklahoma. And he ran that bill, and I argued, well, no, kids need safe spaces, and what are we doing taking that away from people? He won the debate. I was the only Democrat in the room. He won the debate. But the bill didn't become law. Do you know why? Because while we were debating the bill, there was a fight in an Owasso bathroom. And you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that embarrassed the GOP majority. Not that the fight happened, but that the story started to spread. And it didn't spread in Oklahoma. It spread in newspapers all over the country before national reporters started coming back and calling Oklahoma and saying, what's going on here? So the GOP dropped bills like that for a session. And I'm happy to say they didn't do that much in that regard this year, though that has always been one of their favorite go-tos, is to attack marginalized communities, people who seem different from them, and make that the case. I have never run a bill that had to do with the LGBT community. I have always run bills on education, on issues that matter to my constituents, but I will always fight bills that go after people, that target people, and somehow use the power of the state to make people feel marginalized. And I think we should keep doing that. You can count on Democrats to fight that fight. It's not that we're only interested in those issues. It's the Republicans who always bring that stuff up. We understand what Angela said. They come for these people, they'll come for anybody. But you know what's funny? You know who they came after this year? Windmills. Windmills. This year, windmills was the big fight. folks out in rural Oklahoma are benefiting from wind turbine construction. It's big in western Oklahoma. It's getting bigger in eastern Oklahoma. You can get $25,000 a year, a royalty on your farm for having a turbine in there. It generates energy, which keeps costs down for us here in the southwestern power pool. It's greatly reduced. There are environmental impacts to any form of energy, but it's much better than natural gas, which of course is better than coal, and it improves our energy portfolio. It's rural jobs, and it's tax revenues for rural schools. And yet some people, small minority in rural Oklahoma, get jealous when their neighbor has a wind turbine. They say, oh, it's an eyesore. They say that the turbines spread PFAS in the air. I don't know where they get this, but... and they got well financed by a competing industry. I think you know who I'm talking about. And they ran major efforts to ban new wind turbine construction in eastern Oklahoma. Now you can feel how you want about it, but I got up in committee and argued, look, you're interfering with property rights and free enterprise and rural jobs and the rural tax base. Why am I, the Democrat, making these arguments? And we killed that bill in committee. But leadership, yeah, we did. It went down. But it's like a Dracula movie. It got back up. And it ran 3 weeks ago. They ran another version of the bill. The appropriations chairman, very powerful Republican, runs this bill. He wants to be corporation commissioner, which has oversight over a lot of these energy issues. So this was his big chance. He runs the bill on the floor of the House, and I get up and I make the same speech. But I added to the speech, and I said, rural energy, rural electrification began under FDR, a good Democratic president. And back then, right? And back then, all the rural Oklahomans were Democrats because they understood the contribution electrification played in revolutionizing life in rural Oklahoma. And a lot of those people strayed away from the party for a variety of reasons. Maybe we haven't been talking to them enough. So I said, we need to vote down this bill, and maybe it's time for a lot of you to come back to the Democratic Party.